Hello, everyone. Welcome to the keynote on day one for the Creativity Conference in January 2021. I see a lot of people are turning up. It's been fantastic seeing the presentations that have taken place already. Most of you will have had these welcomes already. We are, of course, allowing video cameras to be turned on, so please do turn them on and we're going to know who we're talking to. Your microphones are muted because we want to be able to hear our speakers. And we've just got a couple of announcements and things to share, and we'll be kicking off. I'll be giving you a presentation myself about creativity. This has been a phenomenal conference already so far. And I'm going to kick off, actually, before doing anything else, with a couple of video clips that we put together for the conference. So I'll just switch over and share that with you now.
How do you find that state of mind? That feeling of flow? The lightning strike of inspiration? How can you manifest your ideas in an impactful way? To be creative is to be expressive in new ideas. Be a change maker, be it poetry, drone piloting, or teaching. Join us today to boost your creative streaks and to explore the quintessential essence of creativity. The Creativity Conference. Nurture your creative nature.
Wonderful. And that work is, any of you who are familiar with Abby McGovern, who's a member of our team, was the star of that presentation and did amazingly. So welcome again to the January 2021 Creativity Conference. As you will have heard again and again and again from our marketing materials, we're presenting 90 sessions, 3 keynotes. Hello, this is one of them. We've got 7 panels in there. And our goal as a conference is to really broaden horizons and give people an opportunity to explore creativity in new ways. And the clue's in the tagline, I suppose, that we want to help you nurture your creative nature. I want to start out by thanking, in particular, our sponsors, Dell, NVIDIA, and Intel, without whom this would be impossible. We certainly would not be able to present the conference for free. So hats off to our sponsors for making this possible and being amazing while they're at it. There's a couple of housekeeping things that I want to share with you. One is that we'll be sending out feedback forms at the end of each day and at the end of the conference as a whole. And I would really appreciate it if you take a moment to talk about the sessions that you most loved and were most impactful for you. We're going to be looking to develop an in-person version of this conference in Reykjavik in Iceland. And we'll be wanting to invite the best of our speakers to come and hang out with you in that amazing city. Also, every time you complete one of those forms and submit them, you go into a raffle to win a full 12-month Adobe Creative Cloud license. And we're very grateful to them for supporting the conference in this way. Now, at this point, also, I mustn't forget to mention, I've added to the schedule an hour-and-a-half of social meetup, where it's just at the end of the day each day. It runs from 6 p.m. New York time. That's pretty late in the UK. It's 11 p.m., 3 p.m. in California. what is that, midnight in Europe, but who goes to sleep in continental Europe, really? So come along and you will be able to turn off the mute button. You'll be able to share and connect and engage with one another. And I hope very much that everybody who has attended the conference will visit our Facebook group and share ideas with one another and connect as a community. And creatives are a community, and the more we share ideas, the more we support one another, the better. So at this point, I am going to hand over to Matt Allard, who is our come here from Dell, and is going to talk a little bit about sponsoring the conference and his support, and then we'll get on to the rest of the keynote. So let me just unmute you, Matt, and I will.
Thanks, Maxim. I'm unmuted.
There you go. I'm adding you to the spotlight so everyone can see you. I will now discreetly disappear. Hopefully everyone can see you now, and over to you.
Thanks, Maxim. It's really my pleasure to be here. When Maxim approached Dell about sponsorship, we really thought what a great opportunity to connect with creators of all kinds and creative people of all kinds. And of course, we brought along our co-sponsors, NVIDIA and Intel. And I think one of the things I kind of take out of this is that we believe that collaboration is a big part of creativity. And I think the collaboration that Dell has with its partners, and whether that's our technology partners like NVIDIA and Intel, or our software partners, Adobe, Avid, Blackmagic Design, Maxon, you name it. We have so many partners that we work with. We think we deliver the kind of support in our tools that really creatives can benefit from. And I know, I'll just say, a number of the folks presenting sessions throughout the conference are folks that are in Dell's inside circle. They actually work with Dell equipment and can speak positively of that, whether that's the workstations or monitors and the like. So, we think this is a big part of what our workstation business delivers, and we're really so happy to be a part of this conference, and hope to be a part of it in person when the pandemic lifts and we can be face-to-face together. But in the meantime, great to have an opportunity to connect, learn, and to sort of dive into these topics. And I'll look forward to the social event this evening. So again, thanks again so much, Maxim, for the opportunity to play as sponsor, and looking forward to a very productive conference.
Thank you so much, Matt. I very much appreciate it. And hi there. I feel I should mention to everybody that we were not actually going to run any conference this last year. In fact, we pushed it out to January. We were going to push out till August this year. And it was a conversation with Matt where Matt said, well, you could maybe run an online version of it and it would still be really helpful for people and very positive. So how about it? And I'm so glad, Matt, that you made that recommendation. We've had such a phenomenal response, and I'm really hoping that we can have a big impact with the conference. So thank you so much. I will remove this spotlight here. So now you can all see my beautiful face. Hello, everybody. And I will just switch so I can see lots of you. Hi, you're all so pretty. This is amazing. Such wonderful, gorgeous people. So I'd like to make another couple of thank yous before I get on and talk a little bit about why creativity is important to me and why we've created this conference. And the first thing I want to do is I want to give a big thank you in particular to Abby McGovern, without whom I think many of you will have found she's really made this conference possible. Abby's been, I suppose the term is right-hand woman throughout the development of this conference. And she's been the person that you've been liaising with and has made a lot of this possible. So hats off to you, Abby. And we've also had an absolutely phenomenal team of people helping us with this project. I'd like to give a big thank you to Sarah, to Aina, Sonia, Maddie, Nikki, Tom, Sean, Christian, Udoka, and Aidan as well, Aidan Road. You guys are really integral. Anybody who's been dealing with the hosts today in the rooms. They had so little training, so little preparation, and they've done a phenomenal job of pulling everything together. So I'm giving a virtual applause for the work that you guys have done. It's really made a difference. So I also want to give a quick shout out to Nick Haroz. Nick is the person who helped us to finish. I should mention Tom Etheridge, one of the people I mentioned just now, shot the video, the intro video that we produced. A fantastic job. And Nick did some of the finishing work on it. And I wanted to just give a shout out to Nick's company, Creative 111. They're a video training company focused on production, video editing, and motion graphics. They have 30 years experience, extremely passionate about their chosen fields. And you can check them out at Create 111. So at Create 111 on Instagram. Co-founder of the company, Nick Haroz, is presenting for the conference. So check him out because he's a pretty spectacular speaker. In fact, I think we've had Nick speaking already today. So I hope you enjoyed the session. So what I wanted to talk about for our keynote presentation today is a response to this, this idea of nurturing your creative nature. And I wanted to share a few ideas about that idea, that concept that have really motivated me to get the conference off the ground. And for me, you know, I usually begin a lot of presentations by saying, hello, my name's Maxim. I don't know why, but it seemed like a good idea at the time for my parents, I suppose. And that joke at the beginning of a session, for me, for a long time, has just tapped into a concept that's been central to me throughout my life, which is, what does this word why really mean? And if you think about, you know, parents naming their children, really, you know, there's a lot of factors at work that influence the way that parents name their children. And you could say, as a person, I have awesome parents. I often say that I was raised by intellectual hippies. It's a bit like being raised by wolves, but with better tea. But once you are old enough to have an opinion about the name that you've got, the next question you have to answer this is, well, why did you keep that name? If you have a particular name, you can change it to Zanzibar Bubble if you want. You can have any name you like. You can change it by default, but most people don't. Most people stick with the name that they're given as children. And those names, they have a shaping impact on people, just like nicknames that change the way you relate to people. In any case, I think that this question, why, is really central and absolutely crucial for our work as creatives. Now, I'm a writer-director, ordinarily. I'm a screenwriter and a film director. And as a director, I always think that as a writer-director, at least, you're in a really privileged position, because whereas in life in general, we have no idea really what happened yesterday. We kind of half remember it. We don't really know what's happening next. And we don't really know ourselves or what's going on around us. It's very difficult for us to be sure of anything other than perhaps our own internal intent. But what we don't really know ultimately is why things happen, unlike screenwriters who must know why everything happens. Because as a screenwriter, you've got to be able to say, this occurs in the story for this reason. It's going to have this impact in the audience. It's going to change people in this particular way. And I would say that as an artist, if there is a way to measure the worthiness of a piece of art, I would argue that that worthiness is rooted in the degree to which the art changed the receiver of the work, whether it's a painting that moves the person that regards it, a piece of music that changes the way somebody feels, or a poem that changes somebody's perspective. If you change people with the message that you're communicating via the medium of your art, that, for me, that's art. You can call it transcendent, you can call it transformative, but that makes it worthwhile for me. But we have this problem in day-to-day life that we don't know why things are really happening. In fact, if you ask yourself why enough, well, why am I wearing this shirt today? And it's mainly because my friends told me I look sexy in it. There's no real other reason. It doesn't make me look clever. But then you think, well, why is that important to you? And then why do you think that? And why do you think that? And you keep asking why enough. Ultimately, you will always arrive at, because I feel it. You have no better justification for the decisions that you make ultimately than a feeling. And I think that's something that's very important and something that we need to honor and not pretend that there's any problem with it. It's okay that we're motivated by feelings. In fact, there's been quite a lot of neurological research into decision making. And it's been found that actually what happens is your mammalian brain, the feeling part of your brain, makes a decision. And then non-consciously, precognitively, that decision is mapped out. I will have another coffee. And then in the next moment, next fraction of a second, your conscious mind experiences making the decision, as if it were making the decision. It actually occurs after the event. And this is really interesting, I think, for artists, because we strive to be driven by our feelings. And somehow we're always yearning not to have our thoughts cluttered by intellectual analysis and distractions from that pure feeling that we had. It used to be considered an aspirational quality to be childlike, to be open-eyed and unfiltered, have unfiltered expectations. And nowadays, thanks probably to postmodernism, I suppose, we've merged this concept of being childlike with being childish, which is a completely different thing. I think being childlike is crucial. And I think the ways in which we need to be childlike as artists is by being truly open and truly non-judgmental. And in particular, that non-judgmental approach to the experiences that we have. And that's not the same thing as discernment. You can have judgment in the sense of discernment. And that judgment is, you know, do I want tea or do I want coffee? You can discern between the two. But the idea that tea or coffee are somehow intrinsically better or worse than one another, that's where we get into difficulties. And we especially get into difficulties as artists when we apply that form of judgment to ourselves and the work that we create. I do a fair amount of mentoring for newcomers to some creative industries. And there's this fear that many new creatives have. They're starting out in the industry, they haven't proven themselves yet. And they're afraid that they'll get things wrong. They're afraid that they'll break things. And actually, I would argue that getting things wrong, I would argue that breaking things is the work of creating. And so I love this quote that they say the difference between the master and the student is that the master has failed more times than the student has tried. If you see the creative work as some process of correction and adjustment and correction and adjustment, it doesn't constitute failure anymore. It's just the work. And I think that if you're going to excel at any process in life, whether it's raising children or running a company or painting a picture or choreographing a dance, whatever it is that you're setting out to achieve, if you expect to begin with perfection, then the problem is not with the work or your reality, it's to do with your perception of reality. And so I have this theory that people, they rebel against what is real because some of life is painful. It's hard. Life is very difficult. There's a lot of challenges, mainly because we want things, but there's a lot of challenges. Actually, I think that we run away from pain and suffering too much. I don't think that it's helpful for us to avoid all forms of discomfort and pain. In fact, I would argue that if you think of pain, if you take, for example, I've said this many times at presentations, if you have a cut on your arm and you feel pain, there's no point hiding from the pain. The pain is a messenger telling you to pay attention to your arm. The pain is telling you very precisely what's wrong and where to look. And so you look at your arm and you find the wound, you clean the wound, you bandage the wound, and the pain diminishes and the healing begins. And so I think as creatives, we have this opportunity not only to be willing to face our own pain and face our own suffering, but also to communicate to others different types of challenges and obstacles and the pain that we all face as part of the human condition, that existential uncertainty, and to offer a perspective on how to salve that wound. But if you run away from the pain, if you run away from the suffering, you'll never hear the message that it's bringing you, and you'll never see the thing that it's telling you about. And so I think we need to remove this idea that pain is somehow unacceptable. And I believe that reality is always more beautiful than our imaginings. So if you can have the courage to see pain and discomfort, dis-ease as a messenger, and regard the thing that it's pointing to. It's a signpost pointing to a thing. This permits you, if you remove judgment, don't decide that things are worthy or unworthy, they just are. This allows you to have a childlike vision of the world. Children don't judge people's appearances, they judge people's behaviors. And I think there's a fundamental truth tucked away in that somewhere. Now, I also feel that, you know, a lot of people, I was interviewed in a podcast a couple of days ago. It's the This Week in Photo podcast, which, if you check it out, it's a phenomenal website and very well-populated blog and discussion area for people who are creating visual art. And one of the questions I was asked was, can you teach creativity? And I would argue that you cannot teach creativity. And the reason is that creativity does not need to be learned. There's nothing to learn when it comes to making creative choices. In fact, I would argue that every single active choice that you make is creativity at work. Every single time you decide to put one foot forward rather than the other, to make coffee rather than tea, to make a particular kind of food, to deal with a challenge at home in a particular way, to deal with conflict at work, to choose one color rather than another when you're painting a picture, or one movement when you're performing a dance. That is creativity. In fact, I would argue that to be alive is to create. The question is whether you're willing to engage with that idea and take responsibility for those decisions, or if you prefer to see life as a thing that happens to you, that you are experiencing. As an old psychologist friend of mine used to say, you are not what you think you are what you think. Whatever you pay the most attention to, whatever you focus your attention on becomes your reality. Your brain will start to precognitively serve up evidence that supports your outlook and contradicts any, it will just blank evidence that contradicts your outlook. But if you can see every single decision you make as one that you have made based on your subjective needs, not the external views of the world, not what people see outside of you, but what moves you and brings you to life, then you can take ownership for it. Because the only thing you can truly take ownership of, it's not the results, whether you succeed or fail, those are just consequences. What you can take ownership of is your intent. Do you intend to create art that embodies truth? Or are you just trying to please the people who you're imagining that you know what they think? You're imagining that you have understood what they're expecting from you. You can't know. You barely know yourself. Hard enough guessing what other people think of what you're creating. Now, everybody wants to cast a shadow. Everyone wants to have meant something, that their passing in the world is significant. Everyone wants to make footprints in the snow. We all have a right to our place under the sun. And so if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's this idea that we need air, and then we need water, and then we need food, and then shelter, and so on and so on. And if you work your way through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you end up with this idea that it's fundamental to us as a species to seek to self-realize, to be causal agents, to make change happen in the world. And I believe that this is true. And I believe that if it is important for you to make change in the world, naturally, we want to make as much change as possible. And ideally, we want the change that we bring to the world to be good. Now, what you mean by the word good, that's between you and your conscience. But I think that if you are truly setting out to do good in the world, however that manifests, part of that, one of the signs that it might really be good, is a readiness, a willingness to acknowledge that you might be mistaken. If you know that you could have mistaken the right thing to do, if it turns out that you're wrong, and sometimes it will, you will immediately pivot and change direction and find a new path. I was speaking to somebody recently who has been really suffering from suicidal thoughts and making a lot of comments about feeling that they don't want to be alive. This is an incredibly difficult thing for them to undergo. It's also incredibly difficult to hear. And I was meditating, thinking about this, and I realized that actually the problem is not that they don't want to live. The problem is that they don't want this life. And if you take ownership of the choices that you've made and recognize that, you're free to ignore the consequences of your actions, for sure, but you're not free to avoid the consequences of your actions. And inaction is a form of choice. Inaction is a way for you to choose a path. They say in negotiation, if you omit to disagree, you just agreed. Or if you omit to redress a boundary transgression, you just agreed to a new boundary. If you own that, you realize that there are an infinite number of lives that you could be living, and you're not bound to the life you've been living until now. One of the things that I think is great about artists is that artists give themselves permission to disagree with themselves. Yesterday, you didn't have the information that you have today. Today, you have new information and a new perspective, and you now have a different opinion about who you are, what you're doing, and why. That doesn't mean that what happened yesterday is invalid. It means that it was valid then and is now replaced by an even more valid point of view that may yet be replaced by another one tomorrow, even today, even in the next 10 seconds. And as long as you give yourself freedom to have course directions in your choices, your perspective, your outlook, you're alive, you're changing. We actually have a great deal of difficulty scientifically defining living. We don't have a very good working definition. In fact, the last I read, by definition, crystals that grow in caves meet all of the known criteria for living things. But broadly speaking, when we talk about something being alive, we mean that it's quick in the old sense of the word. It's moving. And when I say you are quick, what do I mean when I use the word you? What does that word mean? When you say I, do you mean just your consciousness? Do you mean just the shadows on the wall in Plato's cave, if you're familiar with the story? Or do we mean the total mind? And as a conscious mind, can you claim to know your total mind? I would argue that you cannot. And so our feelings are a conduit to that total mind. Your feelings tell you, do I want to be near this person or not? Do I want to paint or do I want to sing? Do I want to write a story? Do I want to work with groups or not? How does this feel? One of the greatest ways for you to develop empathy is to look carefully at someone and watch their eyes as they speak and ask yourself, how do I feel? Because unless you're suffering from the clinical condition of psychopathy, where you have a disconnect between action and consequence and feeling, you will be feeling what they are feeling. And now you know how they feel. But how often do you stop and ask yourself during your creative work or in your day-to-day life and ask yourself, how do I feel? Do I feel good about this? When I was 17, I read that the secret of life is to find out what you love and to do that. And I found that to be excellent advice. But there's a problem. How do you know what you love? How many people stay in an abusive relationship because they know it, because they're afraid of change? It's frightening to change. Change is painful. How do you know that you love something? And I would argue that the answer to that question, or an answer to that question, is the same as the answer to the question of what should you create? And the answer is, does it fill you with life force? Does it make you feel alive? Do you feel that you could miss sleep for this? Do you forget that you're hungry? Do you jump out of bed in the morning when you think, yeah, I'm going to do that one thing today on the work that I'm creating. Thank God I've got to do that today, and not some tax return and all those things are the logistics that we have in the course of creating our work. If you are engaged in something that makes you feel that way, I would argue that things that fill you with life energy are things that you love. They're things that awaken you, things that you respond to at a profoundly deep level in your being. Your total mind is responding. And contrastingly, if you experience something that leaves you feeling a bit dead inside and lifeless and there's no energy, you don't know what, you just can't keep your eyes open, probably that's not something that you love. Either way, it's a feeling. In Tai Chi, I used to teach Tai Chi regularly, Tai Chi Chuan. And in Tai Chi, there's this idea that the center of your body, which is called the Dantian, just below your belly button, is the center point of your body. And the first thing you do in Tai Chi practice is mentally imagine bringing all of the energy in your body down to that single point in the center of you, where it's calm. And then no matter what's going on around you, you are the center of the storm. Everything is turning around you and not the other way around. And in that calm place, you can have thoughts and opinions that are unfettered by other people's craziness. So in Zen philosophy, they say that the real self is not the thinker. The self is the observer who thinks, this is me thinking, and observes the thought. I think artists find ways, whether it's a personal ritual in the way that you take the brushes out of the case, or as a dancer, if it's a particular way that you stretch, or a singer, it's a particular way that you exercise your voice before you sing. I think that true artists find ways to connect with that stillness inside of them. And that stillness is the place from which pure potential emerges. You must have darkness, because without it, you cannot see the light. If it's light everywhere, you can't see anything. You must have silence, because without it, you cannot hear the music. And so as artists, we all need to find ways to switch off, to disconnect, to close down, to quieten the mind so that we can hear the total mind. And again, I would argue that our feelings are a conduit to it. Art is always expressed via a medium. And that medium might be your voice, it could be the way you move your body, it could be a canvas that you paint on, it could be the words that you write, it could be the way you teach a class, the way you communicate in a negotiation, it could be a performance as an actor. The medium is the craft. It's not the art. So another answer to that question of can you teach creativity? No. But can you teach people how to create? Yes. Because if you are a singer, learn how to sing fantastically. There are techniques, there are tools, there are ways that you can do it. If you're an artist, learn about new brushes, learn all of those workflows and techniques and the use of technology. We just had Matt Allard there speaking about the tools that Dell produces. You need great hardware if you're working with digital creative works. But the goal as an artist is not to learn those things so that they become the focus of your work. The art is not the medium. The medium is the channel through which the art is conveyed. Well, one of our speakers for the conference, Stefan Dowsing, is an abstract artist. And when I was younger, I thought that abstract art was nonsense. I thought it was just silly. And I didn't know why people make a fuss about it. I said, what's the point? And then one day in my 30s, like 20s, I saw a piece of Stefan's work, just colors and shapes on a canvas. And I felt something that I had not felt before. And I realized what the point was about abstract art. I was so moved by it, I was transfixed, even though it's just shapes. There's something so primal about the design that it changed me. Stefan used the medium of his art, or the medium of his craft, to convey something truly artistic. He changed me, and that's something that many people can experience. The work, of course, is developing those skills and perfecting your mastery of those tools. But then we still haven't answered the question, why? Why do you create? Why is it that you care? It's not just about self-expression. It's not just about, if you can write poetry to yourself if you just want to express yourself. But communication is not self-expression. Communication is about being heard. And in order for you to be understood when people hear you, it's crucial that you communicate with them in ways that they can receive. And it turns out that most people listen the way they speak. So the more that you understand your audience, whether they're an audience watching a performance in theater or a film audience or someone listening to a song or whatever it is, touching a sculpture, whatever it is, the more you understand your audience, the better able you will be to communicate with them. And I hope what you seek to communicate with them is intended to be transcendent and good with a capital G, whatever you perceive that word to mean. And so if the question is why go to all of that trouble to help other people understand things that you have learned, well, I suppose what you're really seeking to impart is wisdom. Wisdom comes from experience, not age. And what you're sharing with your audience is wisdom. You're sharing experience with them. And so I would argue that the only real reason why you would ever go to all that trouble to share this with people is connection, because you feel connected to them, because you feel that they matter just as much as you do. And I would argue ultimately it comes down to love. It's about love. That's why. Because you love yourself, because you love the universe that you inhabit, you love the people that you share the universe with. And because of that love, you're driven to be helpful. I believe the fulfillment of human potential is in the service of others. And as artists, you provide a service that is unique. You provide experience, and that is the gift that you give. So that's my presentation. Now, I'm going to, we have just about 5 minutes before I have to end the meeting and go. Everyone has to go on to the next amazing sessions that are lined up that might make even more sense than I'm making here. But I want to wish you all right now, I want to wish you all an absolutely fantastic time participating in these sessions. And I really want to encourage you to challenge the speakers to justify why. Why do they do what they do? And why do they do it in the way that they do? Why are they so inspired by that thing that they have no choice? They're compelled to manifest the idea, the experience, the perspective in the world for you. What is it that drives them? Now, I haven't been reading the chat. I can see we've had quite a lot of comments. Does anyone have any quick questions they want to throw out there? And I might even be able to unmute you. Let's give it a go. Karina Blue Rose says, you mentioned Maslow's pyramid. Actually, you know what? How about I'll just invite Karina to unmute. Let's see if Karina can ask this question themselves. Let's see. It should pop up in the middle of your screen. And if you want to, you can click it and everyone can hear you. Is this called dramatic tension in the movies?
No,
there we go.
It's called hooking up the mic.
Go for it.
You mentioned Maslow's pyramid, and I'm wondering if you believe that it is linear, chronological, like a ladder, or if it's fractal and more circular.
I'm not sure I would say it's either of those. My limited understanding of Maslow's pyramid is that it truly is just a question of survival at the beginning. But then you have to ask yourself, what does survival mean? What does it mean to be? What does it mean to be alive? And actually, in order for us to sustain our existence, we need air and water and food and shelter, those sorts of things in that order of priority. When they're looking at survival issues in the wilds, you make sure that you deal with those things in that order, because you can go without food for a couple of weeks, but you can't go without water for a couple of weeks. You've got to prioritize. And obviously air, for most people, you've got a couple of minutes before you'll probably black out. So those things are foundational requirements. But as you work, once you've resolved those foundational requirements to keep breathing, right? That's the test. Ronaldo Lawrence gave a fantastic presentation earlier on where he said, you've got to start by appreciating that you are breathing, which, by the way, if you look at the origins of us, of life on Earth, the chances of us existing at all by any scientific standard is zero. It's like 0.000000001, a trillionth to one chance that life could have begun at all, and here we are. So appreciating that you exist is brilliant. Appreciating that you have agency, you can have opinions, and you can take action on the basis of those opinions is a privilege that many people don't have. And you have all of your faculties to be able to do it, which is amazing. But then you have this question of, well, what does it mean to be? And if you're looking at seeking fulfillment, if you're looking at seeking to self-realize and to have an impact in the world, now we get into this much more nebulous territory where we exist in a state of potential, and you can respond to that potential any way you want by taking action. I believe that, the way we are as beings living in the world, I believe that this is a world of action. This is a world where you do things, even if it's actively thinking. That's what I would say. It's a kind of pyramid of learning. You say you get the foundational concepts and then you build up to this stuff. I would say it is a pyramid. Wow, we have lots of other questions here. Can you, Misha says, can you elaborate? I'll just read these out because we have only a little bit of time. Can you elaborate on what you said? People listen the way they speak. Very curious statement. Maybe offer some good reads on this. Thank you. So, Misha, what I'm saying is that people have a particular lexicon, a particular way that they use language. And the way that people use language tends to shape the way that people think. And so if you identify the ways in which people express themselves, what you're really learning is about the way they think. And they will tend to hear more easily if you use their language. A good example is, do you use the word transport, or do you use the word car or the word vehicle? Find out what the other person uses and use that word to communicate with them. And then they'll have more brain power left over, not interpreting what you've said, but understanding the sentiment that you're conveying. Josh Lamar says, I tend to think of the Maslow hierarchy as whatever your primary concern is in life. That's where you're at. Yeah, good point. Once you get that part sorted, you evolve to move along the pyramid to the next concern. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying as well about the foundational needs that you have. You resolve the conflicts and then you're free to move on. But it is a kind of, to my mind, it's a constant development towards ultimately the realization of your true self in the world, whatever that person is. Another time I'll give a talk about an episode of Star Trek where they fix a problem by imagining what Spock would have said. But there's this idea that the true you know who that person is, who's not fussed about the things that you don't want to be fussed about. They're not bothered about the things that aren't too concerning. They're just focused on being themselves. And you can think about what that person would do. What would the real me do? And use that as a guide in life. I find it very helpful. Thank you, Ashley. That's lovely. Any advice? Laura says, any advice on overcoming fear in creating, fear of what could be inside of ourselves? Well, thank you for that question. I was going to talk about fear. I think that the experience of fear can be interpreted as a form of experience of pain. So you've got to stop avoiding the fear. The fear isn't the thing. The fear is the signpost pointing at the thing. If there's a signpost, if you're afraid of a tiger, don't pay attention to the fear of the tiger, pay attention to the tiger. And so if you look at your fears unashamedly, without judgment, and really ask yourself, what is the thing that I'm afraid of? Really, what is it pointing at? Really understand it. Awareness is 50% of the journey to change. And you'll discover, oh, wait a minute, actually, most human fears are rooted in unknowns, and there will probably be something that you don't know about the thing that you fear. And if you confront it and research it, then the unknown becomes known. And, now it's logistics. It's a cost-benefit analysis. You're actually not afraid anymore. You're making an assessment. Thank you, Bryce. Yes. Sometimes I treat myself to old Star Trek episodes when I'm working late. Last one, and I better wind up because we've got to let everyone get into the next sessions. Pasha asks, is communication always the main goal of an artist? Surely sometimes self-expression is enough for an artist rather than always trying to find a way to reach other people. That's a great question. I would argue that anytime you create art, you are creating it in order to be experienced. If you're creating art exclusively for yourself to experience, I think that's legitimate, because your goal is to seek to change yourself. And there are forms of therapy based on that idea. But no matter who it is, whether it's yourself or others, there is always an other. The other could be your future self, but it's always an other that will experience the work that you're creating.